There is a question so large, so fundamental, that most people never stop long enough to feel the full weight of it. Not just intellectually, but viscerally. In the way that certain questions, when you truly sit with them, produce something close to vertigo. The kind of question that does not just challenge what you know, but challenges the very framework in which you have always done your knowing. Where did everything come from? Not just the planets, the stars, the galaxies. Not just matter and energy and space, but all of it. Everything that exists. Everything that has ever existed. The very fabric of reality itself. Before the universe, before time, before space, what was there? And if the answer is nothing, then how did something emerge from it? And if the answer is something, then where did that something come from? These are not questions science has avoided. They are questions science has pursued with everything it has. And what it has found, at the very edge of what can be known, at the boundary between physics and philosophy, is something stranger, more beautiful, and more unsettling than anything most people ever encounter in a lifetime. It begins with a moment. Approximately 13.8 billion years ago, everything that exists, all matter, all energy, all space, all time, emerged from a single point of infinite density and infinite temperature. Not an explosion in the conventional sense, not a detonation that scattered material across a pre-existing space, but the very beginning of space itself, the very beginning of time itself, a moment before which the concepts of before and where may have no meaning at all. This is what we call the Big Bang, and the evidence for it is overwhelming. The universe is expanding. Galaxies are moving away from each other in every direction, which means that if you run the film backward, everything converges. The cosmic microwave background radiation, a faint glow of ancient light detectable in every direction of the sky, is the afterglow of that first moment of unimaginable heat, still visible after nearly 14 billion years. The proportions of hydrogen and helium throughout the universe match precisely what the theory predicts should have formed in the first few minutes after the beginning. Everything points to a single origin. A moment when it all started. But here is where the ground disappears beneath your feet. Because if time itself began at the Big Bang, then the question, what came before it, may be fundamentally meaningless. Not unanswered, meaningless. There was no before, because before requires time, and time did not exist. Asking what happened before the Big Bang is, in a certain sense, like asking what is south of the South Pole. The question assumes a structure that simply does not apply. And yet, the human mind cannot rest there. It keeps pushing. It keeps asking. Because the idea that existence simply began, without cause, without context, without anything preceding it, feels deeply incomplete. Not scientifically incomplete necessarily, but philosophically, existentially, in the way that something true but unexplained still leaves an ache in the part of you that needs to understand. So physicists have pushed further. Some have proposed that our universe is not the only one, that what we call the Big Bang was not an absolute beginning, but a transition. A moment when one state of existence gave rise to another. Models like eternal inflation suggest that our universe emerged as a bubble within a vast, perhaps infinite, sea of other universes, each with its own physical laws, its own constants, its own version of reality. In this picture, there was never a true beginning. There was always something. And what we experience as the totality of existence is only a single expression of something incomprehensibly larger. Others have looked to quantum mechanics, the same framework we explored in the previous video, and found something remarkable. At the quantum level, empty space is not truly empty. It seethes with activity, with virtual particles flickering in and out of existence, with energy fluctuations that arise spontaneously from what appears to be nothing. Some physicists, most notably Lawrence Krauss, have argued that the universe itself may have arisen through a similar process, a quantum fluctuation from a primordial vacuum, a spontaneous emergence from a state that was not quite nothing, but something far more subtle and strange. And then there is the deepest proposal of all, the one that sits at the boundary where physics becomes something else entirely. Some of the most serious thinkers in cosmology, including Stephen Hawking and James Hartle, proposed what is known as the no-boundary condition. In their model, time near the Big Bang does not come to a sharp edge. It does not stop at a wall labeled beginning. Instead, it curves smoothly, the way the surface of a sphere curves, so that there is no single point you can identify as the start. Just as there is no northernmost point on a sphere that is more beginning than any other point, there may be no moment in the early universe that qualifies as the true first moment. In this picture, the universe has no boundary in time. It simply is. Complete. Self-contained. Without edge. And without the need for anything outside itself to explain it. But this is where the question that runs through every video in this series returns. Quietly. Inevitably. Like a tide that cannot be stopped. Because even if the universe is self-contained, even if it requires no external cause, even if time has no beginning in any meaningful sense, there is still something that cannot be explained by physics alone. The fact that any of it is experienced at all. The fact that there is awareness. That there is something it is like to stand beneath a night sky and feel the vertigo of these questions. That consciousness exists inside this universe. Or perhaps, as we explored before, that the universe exists inside consciousness. Physics can describe the geometry of the early universe with breathtaking precision. It can calculate what happened in the first fractions of a second after the Big Bang. It can map the large-scale structure of everything that exists. But it cannot tell you why there is something rather than nothing. And it cannot tell you why that something is known, why it is felt, why it appears to anyone at all. That question belongs to a different order of inquiry, one that science approaches from one direction and contemplative wisdom approaches from another. And perhaps the most honest thing that can be said, by physicists and philosophers alike, is that we are standing at the edge of what the human mind can currently grasp, looking out at something that may require not just new theories, but an entirely new way of understanding what existence itself means. So look up tonight, at the sky that has been there since before any human eye existed to see it, at the light that left its source millions of years before you were born, and ask yourself, not just with your mind, but with whatever it is in you that is capable of wonder, what is all of this? Where did it come from? And what does it mean that you are here to ask? Because in the next video, we will turn this question inside out and explore not the beginning of the universe, but the nature of the space in which it all appears. What is emptiness, really? And what if what we call nothing is the most misunderstood thing in all of existence?